In the past few decades, the Singapore education system has adopted and implemented many aspects of the Western approach towards schooling. The emergence of the global economy has led to demands for new skills, knowledge, and competencies that required Singapore to adopt reform of its education system in line with a Western model of education. In view of this, my presentation will be titled Consider the Role of Innovation and Reform in Relation to the Singapore Education System. I will argue in favor of the adoption of genuine evidence-based policy in relation to the Singapore education system and the continuing need for innovation and reform. There are multiple arguments in this presentation. My first argument will be the fact that Singapore has really achieved some important successes responding to globalization. My second argument is, despite these successes, there were problems with the reforms adopted. And my third argument is, in order to address these problems and make the Singapore education system more complete and well-rounded, more stakeholders need to be included, there needs to be less government control, and a greater emphasis upon incorporating evidence from real classroom experience in order to shape and mold further reform to the system. I would first like to introduce you to the successes of Singapore education system. The rapid economic development of Singapore is often attributed to its successful efforts at using education and training to improve the state of the human capital in the country. During the 1990s, the Taking School Learning Nation program reformed the education system, and it outlined the link between learning in schools and the sustainable development of the society that the Singapore government envisioned. Subsequent education reforms in Singapore mirrored many familiar in the West. The results have been impressive, and Singapore has developed an international reputation for producing high-quality academic outcomes. A clear example of this is the high-level performance of Singaporean students in international examination. This brings me to my next argument, which is, although Singapore has achieved some important successes in its education responding to globalization, but despite these successes, there were problems with the reforms adopted. The first criticism would be inequality. One of the key elements of reform in Singaporean education system has been the attempt to diversify secondary school and junior college programs. However, this plan is targeted exclusively at elite school, and therefore, disadvantaged students are often excluded from the potential benefits of reform. In a system that supports elitism, underperforming and under-resourced students may not be able to reap the benefits of reform because they will fall short in an education system built upon regular assessment. This could lead to growing inequality within the education system and Singaporean society as a whole. The second criticism is that there are cultural and ideological problems. The adoption of certain Western ideas and reforms, such as allowing Singaporean students to conduct a stint in Silicon Valley in the United States to become more entrepreneurial, are inconsistent with the Singaporean cultural values and ideology. These stints in Silicon Valley aim to expose students to an entrepreneurial culture which they can bring home to benefit the Singaporean economy. However, the problem with this idea is that Singaporean culture and society does not favor risk-taking the same way that American culture promotes these values, and the potential Singaporean entrepreneurs will be attempting to innovate and create risky business in a culture that does not accept failure. So from here, we know that this reform shows a lack of awareness of the differences in culture between America and Singapore and could have limited success as a result. Similar to the efforts at creating more entrepreneurs, innovation at the school level in which school leaders provide templates for reforms for students and teachers also require a culture of risk-taking and experimentation, which is lacking in Singapore society. It is a fact that there are a lack of entrepreneurship, risk-taking, innovation and creativity among the Singaporeans. But why? Could it be they are too focused with their paper chase? This brings us to our third criticism, which is that exam performance is not the only measure of success for the education system, and this has been the case in Singapore for too long. An education system that overemphasizes on exam performance in fact leads to a set of cautious and conformist working adults that just follow rules and devoid of creativity. While the government did encourage innovation, it continues to demand outstanding academic success in examinations, and hence there's little space for school leaders to design innovative programs and lessons, because in case of dropping exam results, the innovation is likely to be stifled or abandoned at the behest of the state. This over-reliance upon generating high test scores has led to a narrow evidence base through which genuine evidence-based educational policy can be advanced. This brings me to my next argument, which is, in order for education policy to no longer be focused so narrowly on exam performance, it is necessary to create new ways of designing and approaching the creation of education policy. This means, firstly, including more stakeholders in the process of creating education policy. Secondly, ensuring there's lesser government control and interference. And thirdly, prioritizing evidence that emerges from the classroom experiences rather than foreign education models or particular non-classroom based government initiatives. Rather than emphasizing top-down policy making, a more bottom-up approach should be taken that places students, teachers at the forefront of innovation and reform, even if this leads to worse exam performance in the short term. In conclusion, it is important not to underestimate the scale of the challenges and new demands that emerge as a result of globalization and the success of the Singapore education system in responding to these challenges. However, in order to further innovate and reform successfully, it is critical to address problems including inequality, cultural issues, and the strong state interference in the education system. In order to develop a genuine evidence-based policy that is broad rather than narrowly focused upon generating high exam performance, it is vital that a bottom-up approach towards policy formation is adopted. At the core of this process lie the teachers, students, and the classrooms, where the demands for reform and innovation ultimately emerge in a constantly changing educational context. I have come to the end of my presentation, and thank you.